pretty much 24/7 of Band-Aids and homesickness and all kinds of fun little accidents that happen while you're at summer camp. Um, Most of it's just homesickness, though. That's a big deal. Not sleeping in your own bed is a big deal for a lot of people. But anyway, I'll be here today. This is Jonathan. Again, you're joining us for Personality Hacker Plus podcast. Um, I've worked with Joel and Antonia for a little bit of time and love doing the Personality Life Path program. If you've ever get a chance to do the Personality Hacker Life Path, the Personality Life Path program, it's an amazing program. It's one of my darlings. I love facilitating and working with Joel and Antonia on that. In my opinion, it's doing some deep alchemical transformation work in people's psyches, stuff that they've had baggage they've carried around for a long time, able to process it through group work and all kinds of great things. So it's not open right now, but you should go check it out for Personality Life Path and see if you ever want to join up with us. It'd be great to meet you one of these days. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, so summer's a busy time of the year. It's getting really hot here in Missouri. I don't know if it's hot where you're at, but I'm literally talking about the weather again. So I got some feedback this week that my wife said, "Oh, John, when you're recording, like I do these teaching videos sometimes, and I'll record myself doing a training video on Zoom. And when I'm not actually talking to a person, my tone of voice gets very hypnotic, and it puts people to sleep. And that's not the first time I've gotten that feedback before. People have said that they could fall asleep to the sound of my voice. And the pattern I've figured out is that's only when I'm not actually talking to a person. I'm just sitting behind a screen and talking. My voice tends to drone on and uh, hypnotize people to sleep. So I don't know, but I love studying voices. I love thinking about voices. I love vocal quality. I'm a musician, so I love studying the sound of people's voices. And I think there's something to that. Um, yeah, I think there's something to our individual unique voices that we have our inside voice, we have our outside voice. And what you're probably listening to right now, ironically, is my introverted voice. And so lucky you. Not many people get to enjoy that. But anyway, we can sit now in the present moment and enjoy this time together. So welcome again. Inside Out 2 is all the rage right now with the cool kids. So if you've never, I don't, it sounds like I'm doing an advertisement, but I'm going somewhere with this. If you've never seen that movie, like me, I've never seen it, but I hear you should see it. And if you want to go see it, it's about basically emotions and everything. And this is not an emotion wheel behind me. It's a biological clock throughout the 24/7 day, but it's a lot like that. There's all these emotions that are inside a person. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today on the podcast, the little 20-minute clip that we're going to listen with Joel and Antonia. It's about all the emotions and motivations inside us, a lot like that movie. So if you want to look at a great movie, Inside Out 2 is another good one. I remember as a kid, I watched a movie called Inner Space, I think, with Martin Short and Dennis Quaid. And I think it was about a scientist who actually goes inside the human body to eradicate a disease or something like that. Or maybe it was an accident. I don't know. But I thought it was really cool as a kid. Like, wow, there's like a whole world inside our bodies of cells. And it's literal space travel, inner space travel. And we can do that with our emotions as well, as we will learn in the upcoming podcast, which I hope you listen to the full clip when it comes out Monday morning. Incidentally, I'm doing a little poll here and there. I'm wondering, how do you listen to the podcast? Are you like myself, where you listen to it audio, like via Apple or Spotify, or are you exclusively a YouTube listener where you like to watch the video? Let me know in the comments. Obviously, if you're watching the live stream, you're probably watching YouTube, but is that really your primary way of enjoying the podcast content? That's really what I'm getting at, is what is your primary way, the way you mostly enjoy listening to the podcast? Is it through like a little iPhone app, or do you actually go to the web browser? I know some people actually go to the web browser and stay on the page and listen. So there's three primary ways to listen: podcasts. Yeah, I see some Spotify. Yeah, definitely. I'm Spotify for sure. And Apple. I used to be Apple. Anybody listen to YouTube mostly? Any YouTube mostly? I'd like to know that. And also web browser mostly. That's always interesting. I see that some people do listen to the web browser. Always wondering who that person is that opens up the browser and presses play and has the self-discipline to stay on one tab for an hour. That's pretty amazing. I do not do that. I think if you were to see my web browser activity, it would probably be like 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute and a half. I get a little extroverted sensing monkey mind when it comes to web browsers. Anyway, we are about to jump into the podcast. It's good to hear back from everyone. Basically, if you've never been here, the format of this episode, we'll listen to the episode, and then I'll send everyone into a breakout room where the members of Personality Hacker Podcast Plus will discuss the podcast with a little bit of prompt. Everybody pretty much knows everyone, although we do have some new faces from time to time, and it's good to meet new people. My opinion is usually it takes 1 or 2 episodes before people start speaking up and feeling the freedom to start sharing their thoughts, which is really what this is all about. I don't know how many times I've listened to the podcast and wanted to pause and share my own thoughts. So we're always on the hunt for a new and better way to bring the community together of like minds and share all of our thoughts about the wonderful topics Joel and Antonia come up with. After we do the breakouts, we'll all come together, do a little bit of sharing, have some reflection time, and do a journal prompt, and then share a little bit more, and then go out into the world. Because as it has been said before, personality is not really just something we want to process in ourselves and just have as theoretical. We actually want a way to practice it because it is powerful. It is life-changing if you practice it out in the world in your own life. So anyway, without further ado, I think we'll jump into the podcast for today. Karina, if you could cue that up and let me know, and we'll jump into that, and I'll see you on the other side.
So let's go back to this idea of appropriate use of an emotion, right? Like we mentioned before, if you're using the emotion appropriately and somebody else just doesn't like it, that's their problem. That's their responsibility to deal with it. If we are using our emotions inappropriately, like we're exploiting them, and people around us don't like it, well, then that's our problem and that's our responsibility. So I wanted to go to a resource called the Feel Wheel, and this is a resource that you can. I mean, if you look up on Google, just type in Feel Feel and Wheel Wheel, you'll get multiple different diagrams, but they all look relatively the same, very similar. They have a little bit different content in them depending upon who put it together. But I think the original one, I think that's the one that we're using as our source right now. It was made in like 1982. It has in the center, it has 6 different, what you could call maybe core emotions. And then splintering out from those 6 different core emotions are related emotions that sort of wrap around them. And then you have like a third layer of emotions that are outshoots of that center level of emotions as well.
Yeah.
I just mostly want to talk about the center of the Feel Wheel, but sometimes it's easy to reference different ways that center, that core emotion also shows up in more, sort of more nuanced expressions.
Yeah.
But each one is important. And I want to go through and talk about why it's important and the appropriate use of it. And so, so if we hit upon one that is your unacceptable emotion, you, dear listener, if you have one of these that is unacceptable to you, then it's helpful to go, oh, that's why, even if it feels terrible, that's why I need to still have it in my life. I still need to process it in some way and not see it as something that I don't let myself or other people experience.
Yeah.
So the center of the Feel Wheel has 6 different core emotions. They are sadness, or I'll say them as they appear on the wheel. Sad, mad, scared, joyful, powerful, and peaceful. That's the center. And the offshoots of sad are things like bored, lonely, depressed, ashamed, guilty. Offshoots of that are things like jealous, bashful, miserable, inadequate, inferior, and even apathy ends up being an offshoot of sad. Madness has things associated with it like rage, anger, hostility, being critical, and offshoots of those are things like irritated, skeptical, furious, frustrated, selfish, right?
Yeah.
Scared is associated with things like helpless, submissive, insecure, anxious, rejected, and confused. And then an offshoot from that is like embarrassed, foolish, weak, insignificant, discouraged, and bewildered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joyful is associated with excited, sexy, energetic, playful, creative, and aware. And then the offshoot from that is daring, fascinating, stimulating, amused, extravagant, and delighted. For powerful, the associated emotions are faithful, important, hopeful, appreciated, respected, and proud. And some of the offshoots are cheerful, satisfied, valuable, worthwhile, intelligent, and confident.
Yeah.
And then finally, peaceful. So the core emotion is peaceful, and the related emotions are content, thoughtful, intimate, loving, trusting, nurturing. And the offshoot of that is pensive, relaxed, responsive, serene, sentimental, and thankful.
I have a little bit of an issue with this feeling wheel. I think it feels too categorical and too simple and basic. Of course, that would make sense why I feel that way. I'm always like, all right, I got a category. Like it feels too restrictive because we don't experience this way. We don't experience this clean categorical emotion. In fact, when we're in the emotion, that's the whole point of why we have to have a wheel, is it feels chaotic and messy. We often are not just feeling something simple like mad. We're feeling a complexity of other emotions too, maybe hurt and anxious and mad. And like, it's got a bunch of these all coming together. But the one thing that did stand out to me, and I don't want to take us off in a different direction, but the one thing that did stand out to me is at the very center of this wheel, we're talking about states. We're actually not talking about emotions. We're talking about states of being, which are like the deeper core operating system of an emotion. And I realized that that's where a lot of us are operating from, and we have a tendency to be in a state, and we don't have a lot of state control, like the state that we're in, the kind of it's like the emotional or it's kind of like the emotional framework that we're approaching the world from. Some people, and I think we'd call that more temperament. Like I think it was the older use of temperament, not the types use of temperament, like SJ and SP temperament.
But you mean like choleric and sanguine and...
But even broader than that, just like, oh, he's got an angry temperament. He's got a peaceful temperament, almost like a dog temperament, kind of like their attunement of their emotion. And I think when we talk about animals, we do talk about animal states. Like, and we even cluster certain animals, like, which the one is it pit bull that's always kind of like hurting people and it's a problem and there's always fights about it.
All the pit bull owners will be very like they'll
I'm not picking up pit bulls. I'm saying that's one that's a source of contention, right?
Yes, exactly.
People believe that pit bulls are in an angry state. They're just like angry and aggressive as a state of being.
I'm going to go ahead and represent the pit bull owner right now and say, but that's when you abuse them.
Sure.
And that's when you raise them that way. But yes, there's
details don't matter.
In the zeitgeist, there has been a feeling about pit bulls this way.
So, and I'm just using it illustratively. The details don't matter. I have no beef against pit bulls. If you love pit bulls, please love pit bulls. That's cool. Somebody's got to, right? Needs to be have that represented in the world. Every personality is different. We need a pit bull personality. When we talk about dogs or animals, it's very easy to see this temperament state. We're very hesitant to do that to humans, right? Like to project that onto humans. But I think we show up to the world with kind of a state of being, right? And that's probably why we have unacceptable emotions too, is because it doesn't fit into the state that we want to approach the world with. Like I would say, Antonia, sadness is probably the state and it's really close to peaceful. And you said anger's okay. So you're probably somewhere in like peaceful, sad, and mad as you go into the world in the state of being, the emotional system that you bring to the world kind of when you approach. Now you can access the others, but that's not your starting place. Your frame of reference as you enter the world every day is from that place.
Yeah.
I probably am entering it from scared and joyful on that side because I kind of oscillate between the two. And so I'm kind of entering the world with a certain preloaded state of being, meaning that all the emotions in that state, kind of where it's focused, they're more accessible to me than they're going to be to you because I'm already looking at them. And same thing with you, or I'm already kind of like attuned to them in a way. It's almost like it's a way that like my emotional compass is pointed. So I think that's really interesting. And a lot of introverted feeling work, or whether it's in a role that's like very utility, like acting, like an actor. Well, actors are masters at being able to move into the state they need to move into to express, right? That's actually what if an actor's good, they've got all sorts of methods and activities to do this, but ultimately what they're doing is they're getting masterful over state control, and they're controlling the state they show up to a scene or a situation in. So I'm realizing that some of this is not pre-wired, but we kind of go with we preload it. We kind of enter into a state of being, and it kind of sets the tone for how we're going to experience reality.
Yeah, I agree with that. So 2 things as you were talking. The first one is I completely understand why you would take umbrage with this.
Yeah.
I would see it, I like to see it as a little bit of emotional cartography, just like a little bit of a map. And all maps are inaccurate, but some maps are useful.
Sure.
Right. And so I think this helps me because I'm not paying attention to emotions or the complexity of them, like within myself. I'm just feeling something suddenly.
Yes.
This helps me understand what the root source might be of some of the feelings I have and why I'm feeling what I am. It gives me more emotional literacy, basically. And so I don't know if I don't think that this is comprehensive and complete.
No, it's not.
But I think it's like it actually more for me seeds an idea that I find very useful and helpful. So it's kind of like though, anytime something's in your wheelhouse, and it's in your sandbox, but it's like kind of oversimplified for other people's use, it's always like that's not how it works.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, it does it, but it's still helpful. So I wanted to give a nod to you because I'm sure other people who use introverted feeling or authenticity probably feel similarly.
What's the second thing you want to say? Because I don't want to interrupt that before I want to answer what you just said. You said there were 2 things. Did you say both of them?
I didn't say the second one, but go ahead and answer
it.
Okay,
so that's why I brought the state idea into. Is because if I think of it that way, and if you're introverted feeling and you're thinking about this like, it seems too basic, like now that actually does make this thing make sense. Because when we talk about unacceptable emotions,
right?
Well, why would somebody have an unacceptable emotion? Like they should all be on the table. Well, not if we go into the world with a preloaded state.
Right.
If we do that, then this now makes tons of sense. So, and if we look at the middle of that and I go, that's really overgeneralized, sad. That's not really, like, no one feels sad. They feel a complex emotional cocktail of a bunch of emotions that are under the category of sad and under a bunch of other categories. So that's, it's not just one thing. So it seems oversimplified, but not if I'm saying it from how we're proactively entering the world looking for things about sadness. Like we're tuned to sadness, or we're tuned to scared or joyful or powerful. Like it's what we want to see or what we don't want to see because we're like aimed that direction. Now, this unlocks this wheel in a whole new way that I hadn't thought of before until we started recording this podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was definitely a moment of extroverted intuition for you because that was that reframes me too to see it in a different way as well. Like there's like preferred states.
Yeah. My fear is there's like a ton of material about this. Somebody's already like written books about it. And like Joel stumbled on something that's like, it's got a whole discipline. Like Joel, it's state discipline. It's like a whole interstate family systems and you just don't know. I'm like, oh, I'm so stupid. Like that's my fear now that I need something that's already been rehashed.
Calm your eternal child down.
Oh no.
I say stuff all the time that probably has mountains of research on it. And I'm just like, I'm really smart for having come up with that. So feel free to pat yourself on the back if you want to. I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. And if there is a ton of research on it, awesome. Somebody will let us know. I guarantee it. But that said, I'm also noticing that of those 6 core emotions, or as you're saying, states, which I think is a really interesting way of looking at that. Half of them are, I think, what we would code as quote unquote bad emotions or the ones we don't like feeling as a general rule. Like the ones that are, let's call them unpleasant, like the less pleasant emotions. And 3 of them are more pleasant emotions. Yeah. So the 3 that are less pleasant or unpleasant are sad, mad, and scared. And then the pleasant ones are joyful, powerful, and peaceful. Yeah. And of the 3 that are less pleasant, they also happen to be the primary emotions of the Enneagram. Right. So you've got the gut triad, 8, 9, and 1, which is anger, right? Mad. You've got the heart triad of 2, 3, 4, which is grief, right? Or sad. And then you've got 5, 6, and 7, which is the head triad.
Yeah.
And that the core emotion there is fear. So you've got of the 3 core states or emotions, and that's probably part of how we are pre-wired to have a state. Is we all have an Enneagram type, and depending upon our Enneagram type, that's probably the emotion we have a tendency to find ourselves landing in, is my suspicion or guess, or the state rather.
Yeah.
So all of that said, of these 6, and pointing out that half of them are, pleasant and the other half are unpleasant. The assumption one would make is that of the pleasant, of the 3 emotions that are pleasant, why would any of them be unacceptable? Right? Why would you ever think that peacefulness is an unacceptable emotion? But I think I've been coaching for long enough to know, no, people absolutely will have an unacceptable emotion be one of the ones that we would say is pleasant or positive.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a piece of it, is be on the lookout. If you think that you have to, like we said before, you don't have to have a narrative or story to feel good, right? Have you somehow wired it in your head that you have to have a good reason to feel good?
Yeah.
That you have to rationalize or explain or have a sufficient narrative to validate one of the more pleasurable emotions.
I don't know if people would think this is pleasurable, but I think we have a problem in the world, a challenge right now where people need to feel more powerful, and they keep resisting the feeling of power because they've been told it's wrong to feel that way, like to direct power. So what they do is then they go like they'll become like paperwork police, like I don't want to step into an actual powerful leadership frame. So what I'll do is I'll go into my neighborhood, and those kids that aren't supposed to be skateboarding at that park, I'll know the code of the law of the county or the city we're in, and I'm going to use the law as my authority, and I'll wield that as a temporary or bastardized way of trying to feel powerful over these kids, because I'm refusing to step into an actual leadership role and take the responsibility that comes with. I'm avoiding feeling powerful, but I really do want to feel it. So now I'm doing it in a jacked up way. And I think this is writ large on our planet right now, is that as one category as an example.
Yeah,
right?
I would totally agree.
And
with
I
that.
don't think powerful is I think everybody wants to feel powerful over their, at least themselves, like empowered, right?
Yep.
And so it makes us feel weird. We're not supposed to. We've been told we're not supposed to feel these things too.
Yep. So, well, why don't we talk about why they're all important?
Let's do it.
What they do for us. Would you want to start with power? We certainly can. Okay. So there's a lot of importance in feeling power, right?
Yes.
Like we need to feel it on a regular basis. We need to feel power, and we need to feel powerful. And we need to not let other people tell us that that's wrong and that we're trying to get away with something, or like anybody who seeks a feeling of power is somehow like automatically corrupt. I think that is a common contemporary message. And yet power does a lot for us. The first thing is that the feeling of power is, of course, associated with self-confidence.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like you have the power to affect your environment or the power to affect yourself, well, then you have a sense of confidence moving through the world, right? So power is a necessary feeling for self-confidence. It kind of makes sense why there's a lot of insecurity in the world these days, right? There's a lot of uncertainty and questions around whether or not I'm going to be okay, or why the word adulting even exists, right? It's like there's a withholding of our sense of our power, which allows us to experience self-confidence. And the other thing that comes along with it, or one of the other things that comes along with self-confidence, is a sense of self-efficacy, right? I'm good at what I do. I'm good at doing a thing. And we need to feel that. We need to feel a sense that we are competent and capable people in the world. There's also a sense of control that comes along with power, and not just like a sense of being controlling, which of course is the first place that a lot of people's minds jump to. Of course you want power because you want control. It's like, well, no, we need to feel a sense of control. If we feel like our entire lives are out of our control, then we start getting really anxious. We start to, we might even be self-sabotaging, right? Because we fear that we're not in control of anything and everything will spiral out. Yeah. And we might try to speed that process up.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, what would we say if a hijacker came onto an airplane, they overpowered the cockpit and overpowered the pilots to take control of that plane? The pilot needs to be in power and not be overpowered, right? So it also is a defensive thing too. Like, you don't want, you don't fight fire with like, wood. You fight with fire. You need to be powerful so that you're also not exploited as well.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we forget. Like that pilot needs to be in full power of that plane.
Yep.
That's his job or her job. They need to be doing that because that's important. And you don't want to be overpowered in that scenario. I mean, that's a dumb example, but to that point, we even say, oh, that person was overpowered. And we say that's bad in that scenario.
Yep, exactly. And then finally, a feeling of power is part of how we experience fulfillment.
Yeah.
And fulfillment comes through oftentimes a sense of achievement, right? Like you've watched yourself show up strong in a situation. In fact, you were strong enough to achieve and accomplish and make progress in your life. And now you feel a sense of fulfillment. You feel good about that. And so, so a sense of power and all the associated emotions with it, things like, hopefulness comes under the auspice of power, and worthwhileness and valuableness comes under a sense of power.
I'd say responsibility comes under power because power is over something or resource. You're also now responsible for the thing you're over, right? You have to steward it and caretake it.
Yeah, and the way they've got it organized, and maybe this may or may not be true for everybody, but they've also got cheerful under the category of power, which I find to be a very interesting relationship.
It's not under joyful.
I know.
It's under power.
It's under power. And I think it's because when you feel like you have power to affect change in your life, you feel a sense of cheerfulness. You're like, yeah, things are going to be okay. So there's a little bounce in your step. You're going to be all right. So power and a feeling of power is very important. So if power is one of your unacceptable emotions, you think you're a bad person if you're feeling it, well, you might be actually undermining yourself. You might be undermining your own sense of fulfillment.
Are you saying that disempowered people are not cheerful, Antonia?
I know, right?
I would have never guessed.
Shock.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jonathan with Personality Hacker, and you are listening to the Personality Hacker Podcast Plus. We just watched a 20-minute clip of the upcoming podcast where Joel and Antonia are talking about the Feel Wheel. Big thanks, by the way, to Gloria Wilcox, who designed that back in 1982. I just want to stop for a minute and say, what a great tool that someone sat down and started working on that. I'm pretty sure it just didn't just dump on the page when she was working on it. It was probably a lot of testing over and over and over again, and gathering a lot of data, gathering a lot of her own personal experiences. And I really love how the purpose of that is to bring intimacy with the people around you. And it made me think, if I'm not willing to experience an emotion, and I'll just say my own personal one, I'm very comfortable with almost all of those emotions. I was going through the wheel, but mad was definitely one of those. I was like, I don't want to feel mad. I don't like feeling mad at all. But I thought, wow, if I'm not willing to feel mad when someone is feeling mad, I'm going to have a very hard time relating to them in a sympathetic way, because I myself am not comfortable with that own emotion. And of course, I couldn't help but look outside the wheel and ask, what's on the outside of the wheel? You got the center of primary emotions, and then they expand into 2 and 3 categories. But what's the outer space that kind of holds all that together? Dare I introduce a word? I say it's stillness. Not peace, just absolute perfect harmony, stillness. And the pathway to that for all of us is traversing through the emotions. So if you find yourself feeling mad, you find yourself feeling powerful, you find yourself experiencing emotion, know that the pathway through to stillness on the other side is going through the journey of emotions. And like any journey, it's full of bumps and bruises, successes and struggles along the way. You learn a lot about yourself, and you meet a lot of people along the way. It's an adventure, it's a journey. And of course, the quest is on the other side, which is what we're seeking: stillness and wholeness of self. And you can't really have wholeness of self if you are unfamiliar with your own emotional landscape. So the best thing you could do is get to know yourself in all those aspects. So I'm on a little bit of a quest. You know what? I'll save that for the discussion group, which I think we should address right about this point. What about you? Everyone in the breakout rooms, I think we are going to pivot and go to the discussions. We'll get into small little groups. And I mean, the thing that came to my mind as a discussion question, which emotion is unacceptable? Which one do you have a strong law and order around? You have lots of regulations, and that might help you if you think of the whole wheel as like this giant cityscape, this metropolis of emotions that is you, the Jonathan Project, whatever life you are living. There's probably some policing that goes on with some of those emotions. For myself, there's a lot of jurisdiction around mad, right? Well, we got to keep those guys in check. There's metal detectors and there's paperwork to fill out. It's almost exhausting for me to experience anger, madness, and but nevertheless, it's a human emotion. It's a human experience, and it might even be a vital nutrient for living. So I don't want to ignore that part of myself. And so I have to sit and think like, I've regulated and legislated a lot of my anger emotions. All those mad emotions, they're absolutely yucky. Even when I feel jealous, sometimes when I feel jealous, and I just really struggle with like, am I allowed to feel jealous? I hate feeling jealous. I don't like this look on me. It feels uncomfortable, unlike other emotions. So I would go into a breakout room just now and say, okay, guys, what's up with that? And which is a wonderful thing I love about the community is we all speak the same language of Myers-Briggs. We all know the cognitive functions. We've taken some programs for whether it's Profiler Training 101 or Personality Life Path, or you've purchased an owner's manual. So we have like this common language that we can share. And that allows me to receive feedback. We have an ENTP in the breakout room. She can provide tons of feedback about myself. And we have that wonderful container where, as a personality hacker community, we can not only express our own experiences and be, somewhat vulnerable, we can also receive from others and have others reflect things back to us. It's a wonderful, like I said, an alchemical experience where you're simultaneously listening and receiving at the same time. It's a beautiful combination that I think is the necessary ingredient for transformation. So please join us sometime. And I think we're going to send everyone to the breakout rooms with that's the discussion. Which is your unacceptable emotion? Why? Talk about it. And whoever talks first goes first. We'll just say that. So I'm going to send everyone in breakout rooms. Here I go. Let's just see if I can get this done. Well, I can't find the button. I'm going to be looking for the button. Let's see if I can find the button. There we go. Okay. I'm going to create, let's see, how many people do we have? I'm going to create 2 breakout rooms. And we're going to get like that. Open all rooms. Okay. You should be able to join now. Everyone join. And when your heads disappear from my screen, I will start talking. Looks like everyone's joining, I think. Okay, wonderful. If you are still here, thank you for listening today. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your Sunday to enjoy this little bitty segment from the Personality Hacker Podcast Plus. Once again, I'm Jonathan. Visit us at www.personalityhacker.com. Take a test, get an owner's manual, talk to a person in a discovery call, such as myself, Karina, or Jess. Get to know us. Come join our community of like minds and watch your life be transformed. Okay? Hope to see you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast Plus membership. Hope you are able to listen in on the podcast this upcoming Monday. Listen on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcasting platform you like. Watch it on YouTube. And as always, yours in discovery. This is Jonathan Harden. Have a good day.